Hi, everybody. We're live. And we are live. We know that for sure. We are, in fact, live right now. And today I'm here with three different wonderful people from the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority at the state of Ohio. We have here Tim Gurrell, the Executive Director, Junie Cunningham, Community Outreach PR Manager, and Ben Gibbons, Director of Marketing and Director of Marketing with a COVID beard. Ben brought a COVID beard with him. So we're having this conversation now because even though times have changed so dramatically, 529 college savings plans are still so important. And many of us right now are wondering, with the changes from COVID, are there restrictions or opportunities that we maybe didn't know of before? So that's our goal tonight. The first thing I want to say is if everyone wants to put where they're coming from in the comments, we'd love to hear that. And then also anytime throughout the evening, if you'd like to add any questions into the comments, we'll try to get to as many as we can. So there's a comment in there right now. Let's see what we've got. Oh, I think it's a tag for someone else. But anyway, tell us where you are, and we're going to get started right now. Okay, so the first question I have for you, we're going to start with 529 in general. Then we're going to move into the implications of COVID on 529, and then talk a little bit about the market and how that might impact 529s. So how does 529 affect your financial aid package, just generally speaking?
I'll start off and take that one. It's minimal. It's only 5.64% is the percentage that takes into account for your financial aid package. So what does that mean? Say you had $10,000 in your 529, and that would be factored into how much aid that you would get. That could affect your aid package by $564. You have over $9,000 then working for you to your advantage. Obviously, if you have more in your 529 account, that increases slightly, but you still come out ahead, with a minimum impact on those financial aid packages.
Okay, so tell us what the benefits are, because we probably should have started with that one instead of how it impacts negatively your financial aid package. What are the benefits of a 529 plan?
Well, in short, taxes, taxes, taxes. You take after-tax dollars, you invest them into your 529 plan. Those investments grow tax-free, and whenever they're withdrawn for qualified expenses, there's no tax implications. Yes, there are other ways to save. Very popular. People want to save in their bank savings accounts, which is fine. But the interest and the return on those investments, will not match your 529. And history is behind us. You make your investments, and your account will grow on those. The stock market is reliable. And I know we have blips, and we're going to talk about COVID here coming up pretty soon. But in the end, you'll still come out ahead. And so those dollars that you invest will grow tax-free, and they will increase in value for you. So they'll do more things for you to pay for those education expenses that come after high school.
Okay, so we actually solicited some questions beforehand, and if you're listening right now and you have additional questions, please put them in the comments, and we'll get to them. Right now, I want to ask you a question that I actually don't know the answer to. What sort of documentation do you have to keep when you're spending from the 529 plan?
Well, yeah, keep your receipts because we do not track that. It's a matter of trust. If somebody is making a withdrawal from their 529 plan, and qualified expenses, to remind everybody, are for tuition and fees, room and board, computers, books, any expenses that are required by that education entity, to complete that degree program, that training program, that technical program. That's what you can use your 529 for, and you don't have that tax implication. In the event that you would be audited by the IRS or the state saying, hey, you made this withdrawal from your 529 plan, what did you use it for? Well, I used it for housing. I used it for the tuition and fees because the beneficiary was attending or is in this trade school, this technical school, this 2-year, 4-year college, whatever the case may be. And so you just have to show that. it comes into account, anticipating a question here as to what about off-campus housing. The test on that is that if a school has room and board, that's the limit you can use if the student or the beneficiary is living off campus. So if the school, whatever they charge for room and board, you can take that for your off-campus housing and your board expenses. Judy and Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
I'm good.
Anything to add, you guys?
I think
Ben
you got
and
it
Judy?
right there, Tim.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Chelsea, who has a 1-year-old, and they already have their 529 plan started. So yay,
Great,
that's amazing.
great.
Okay, so so we know we have to keep records in case we get audited. But what's the extent of what we can use it for? Like, there's always you hear these stories of like, you could use it for travel expenses. You could use it if you need to upgrade your internet at home because your kid's learning at home. Are there like some less known things you can use it for?
I'll let my colleagues take the first shot at that. Ben, you want to
Sure.
take that one?
So let me just run through that kind of whole litany. I know Tim touched on it before, but tuition, room and board, books, rent, living expenses in some cases if the child's living at home and going to school, off-campus housing, rent, computers, internet, related fees for that. And then apprenticeships. That is something new for calendar year 2020. You can use it for related costs associated with an apprenticeships.
What kind of thing would be associated with an apprenticeship?
Equipment, tools. That could even get into the protective gear, depending on what type of apprenticeship you're pursuing. Those things. And that gets to a core component of you were asking about what are the lesser known things. There are those things that are specifically associated with that type of degree or certification. If you're enrolled at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music and your child plays cello, you may want to make a case that from your perspective, that's a qualified higher education expense. As Tim mentioned, we would pay it out. Not to say that the IRS couldn't ask questions later on, but if it's related to your field of study, then you should feel comfortable doing that. And honestly, up until 5 years ago, that's what many families had to rely on when it came to paying for a computer. That's only been in effect since 2015. So thankfully, that's much easier because, well, everyone needs a computer for school these days. It doesn't matter what type of school you're attending.
Right. Even uniforms, if you're in the College of Nursing or School of Nursing, and you're supposed to have on a certain type of uniform as a nursing student, you can use your 529 funds for that as well. So, like Tim and Ben both have said, it covers a wide variety of the expenses that you do need for college. Now, you would be kind of hard pressed to try to, use it for pizza on an evening night or something of that nature. But if this is a requirement that you need for your class, that's what your funds are for. And as Ben and Tim both have said, the receipts are important because you will need to keep those receipts because you will need to show proof that it was a higher education expense that was required.
All right.
And you mentioned about transportation, and unfortunately, no, transportation doesn't qualify.
Yeah.
So if a beneficiary chooses to go cross country to school, and they want to come home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the case may be, that is not a qualified education expense.
Right.
All right, good to know. So with the world opening up of people thinking about different opportunities, Tim told me this one already. I love this one. You can pay for stunt school with your 529.
Yeah.
Let's look outside of stunt school and think about gap years. Are there any criteria that you have to meet in order to use your 529 for a gap year?
That's what an advantage of among many for 529 is, because it doesn't have a shelf life. And so if somebody's using it now, maybe the intention or the educational goal was after high school that beneficiary was going into trade school, technical school, 2-year, 4-year college, public, private, in-state, out-of-state, whatever that entity was. And maybe this has changed everything. Maybe they're hitting pause and they're going to do something later on, or they're reassessing what they wanted to do because as is the case, like a lot of times in times like this, it attracts people to different professions. Maybe they thought all along they were going to do profession A, and now they want to be involved in the public sector, maybe in healthcare, maybe things that are brought about by the COVID environment. So yeah, if you hit pause, there's not a shelf life. You can use your 529 as intended. Then it may be 2 years down the line, it may be 3 years, it may be for an additional degree that somebody's in, and so it really doesn't doesn't affect that. If you're saying, yeah, I mean, you need to be in a qualified program, whether that be an apprenticeship or school or whatever, to use your funds. It's not like, well, I'm sitting this out, I'm taking a gap year, and I need to use my 529 to pay for my apartment while I'm deciding what I want to do. You can't. You need to be enrolled into a program and actively pursuing a certificate, a degree, some sort of educational. Ben, Judy, you want to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking as you were speaking, Tim, that that the beauty with 529 and College Advantage is that the flexibility that the program offers, because you could have a student who might get a scholarship, and it might actually cover the first 4 or 5 years of their undergraduate study, and their parents have been saving for them. But they can use their 529 funds should they decide to go on and get a master's degree, or they're going to law school or medical school. And so you have that flexibility. So as Tim said, there's no shelf life for it. I'm a good example of a parent who has a 529 plan. I continue to, I've never stopped my payroll deduction, even though my son has graduated, and that's my youngest. But every time he decides to take a course, he has the funds that I still have in his account that will allow him to take an online course, buy the book or whatever he needs for that. And so that's one of the beauties of it, the flexibility that the program gives you.
That's great. Okay, so Eka has a question here. I'm going to show you. I Venmo my daughter for her rent and fees. Can I take that out of her 529?
Yes, provided that she's in a certified program or an apprenticeship, you can. And the litmus test of that, as I mentioned earlier, is that you use that school's what they charge for room and board. That's the upper limit on that. Ben, Jimmy?
Just one other thing I'll add, especially for something like rent, the thing you're keeping there is not only your canceled check or your electronic receipt of payment, but you probably also want to hold on to a copy of the lease to see what your student was paying for rent during that semester or during that school year as well. Just one more critical document to rely on. Heaven forbid if something ever happens and you're audited by the IRS, or just even get a letter of inquiry from them. Asking for more detail on qualified higher education expenses.
Okay, I'm going to do one more question from Laura. Can we use the money in our 529 to pay for college application fees? I have a senior in high school.
Short answer, unfortunately, no.
No.
We in the industry, and we understand that question, and that is something that does come up because just as by way of clarification, what you can use your 529 for is established by federal code, federal law, and so Congress determines that. Ben mentioned it that this was long in coming, that computers up till 3 years ago were not a qualified expense, and come on, it's been over 20 years now that computers have been an integral part in these education programs. And you would think that too. Here's an individual, a person that's going on to higher education, and you think you would be able to use it for those, but that's not a provision right now.
Okay. Colleen wants to know what happens if they graduate and decide not to go to college, which I think is going to happen to a number of kids right now. What happens to these funds?
Yeah, again, it goes back to that shelf life because there's great flexibility with the 529. One of the beauties of it is that the account holder retains control of it. So plans change. Maybe the beneficiary, the intention was that they're going on to college or to something else, education opportunity after high school, and they decide, I'm going to go backpacking in Europe. And in other plans, once a beneficiary becomes of age, they become the control of those funds. With a 529, the account holder holds on to that. So you can either hold on to that and maybe that person decides to do something later on in a few years from now. There's great flexibility. You can transfer that to another sibling, another child. You can a very broad definition of family members that can be used for, or you can use it for yourself. You want to add to that?
So
yeah.
I do want to add just one thing, kind of if you get to that worst case scenario and the account's just not going to be used, or you need to liquidate it, or best case scenario, there's something left over in the account when your child graduates and there's not really anyone else you want to transfer it to, you can liquidate the account. Now, keep in mind, as Tim said earlier, that money is growing tax-free at the state and federal level with the idea that it's going to be used for future college costs. And if that's not the case and you liquidate the account, or in an environment like this, maybe you have to liquidate the account. Your family's circumstances have drastically changed. Worrying about the future means getting through next week. You can liquidate the account, cash it out. All of your contributions were made with after-tax dollars, so you've already paid taxes on those. The only thing that could be taxable is the interest, the earnings. If it's a non-qualified withdrawal, the IRS will assess those earnings will be taxed, and the IRS will assess a 10% penalty on the earnings, which is not unlike an early withdrawal from a retirement savings plan. Now, I mentioned, though, that best case scenario, your child's graduated, there's something left over, and you want to give it to them. You can have that refund come due in their name, in your student's name, which in theory means they should be in a lower tax bracket to lessen the family's overall tax burden at that time. Even, even if they're not using, there's something left over that they're not using as originally intended. You've still got flexibility when it comes to flat out non-use. So lots of flexibility baked into this.
Yeah, but that's great to know that we should do it in our children's name. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, there has to be a named beneficiary on the account. Usually your student, your grandchild, child, whatever the case may be.
Okay, our next question. Alexandra asks, can children in the same family share funds from 529 if one child received undergraduate degree but another continued to graduate school and needs more funds?
Yes.
The short of it, is that yes, is that. The thing we get asked that a lot. What's the best strategy if you have several children? It's personal, and I think you have to look at it. You open you have 3 children or 2 children. You open a 529 account for each of them. Maybe there's a gap in there, and you focus on the child that's older and open your 529. But then you can take funds out of that and roll it into the for the younger child as you're going on. Each account, though, needs to be in a beneficiary's name. And you open that account with a social security number. So you have flexibility of taking funds out of that and moving it into another account, but it isn't that you can have a 529 account and then I'm going to draw for our oldest in that, and then 2 years behind the oldest is our next child that's going into school. We're going to use that onto that. Each account needs to have a social security number for the beneficiary. Ben, Judy?
Yep. Yeah, I was going to just say the same thing.
Yep, you got it.
Okay, we're going to give a shout out to Chelsea. She's got a 1-year-old and she opened an account already. So she wants to know, as a newbie in this field, what should we be looking at to maximize our earnings over the next 10 to 20 years? Oh, look, there's a picture of that cute baby.
I know, a great picture of the family. Thank you for sharing that, Chelsea. Ben, Judy, go ahead. You want to take the first shot at that?
Go ahead,
Well,
Ben.
I'll start by saying that really at the end of the day is a personal question. The good news is we have tools and calculators on our website to help you better figure out what the right answer is for you. How much should I be saving? How often should I be saving? At a high level, save as much as you can, save as often as you can. But even within that, there's some variation on what might work best for your family. I encourage you to visit our website, collegeadvantage.com, look at our tools and calculators and figure out what works best for you based on your time horizon, whether it's 17 years or 2 years. How much can you afford to set aside at a given time? What's your risk tolerance? What's going to work best for you? What might work best for your retirement plan might not be the same thing for your college savings, because it's your child and you want to take care of them and you have a shorter horizon. We have tools and calculators that can help you set those goals, make those investment decisions, and then also additional tools on our site to help you figure out what's best by life stage. So what worked for a 1-year-old might not be the best strategy for a 15-year-old, and you can adjust accordingly to fit the changes in your family's life stages between now and even while your child is in school, when they're in college, because you can still keep saving then, because you're going to have to pay for books next semester or rent next semester. So why not keep putting money in to maximize your tax benefits even while they're in college? So you could really have a 22-year-long or more horizon of saving just for your child's undergraduate degree.
And I'd like to add, congratulations, for starting. That is the first step, because a lot of time folks are paralyzed or they're overwhelmed by how are we going to save all this? How are we going to do this? You can start modestly. As life goes on, maybe the economic situations change. You get a promotion in your job. Maybe you take on childcare expenses. And then once that beneficiary, that baby is going to kindergarten, that frees up more funds. It's just important to start, and to have a, just maybe it's a modest goal to start with. Maybe it's we're going to save for some of this, and then as you're going on, it's like you create momentum, and it's like, oh, we're going to buy all right on this, and we could bump this up a little bit more, and then it continues. Judy, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. It's funny. Well, we all say the same thing, but I was also just going to add that, the wonderful thing that they've done is they've started while their child is still a baby. And so they have this long horizon. And, as both of you have said, life changes happen. And so maybe, what they're doing now might be modest, but once they're no longer paying daycare or something of that nature, they can make these changes. And if they have to dial back a little bit because something happens within the family, they still have that flexibility. But the important thing is that they've started at a great time, and congratulations.
Okay, let's shift into COVID a little bit and the impact. And also very far away from Chelsea's story, because one of these questions is, if we get a refund for part of our college costs because of the pandemic, do we need to put the money back into the 529, and are there any tax consequences?
Well, the short of it depends on the timing of that. You can do that, but say it was earlier in the year and you didn't put the money back in, but you have expenses going into the fall. Well, that's fine. But you can put it back in, and there's not a penalty,
Right.
for doing that. And again, it just depends on the circumstances, and certainly going into the fall, that could be the case in some schools, because their plan was to bring students back on campus. But if the environment changes on campus and students go into online, or they're asked to leave campus, then you have that potential for refund by the educational entity, and then you can put that back in. That's the best thing to do, unless you anticipate in this calendar year that you're going to use those funds for education expenses. Ben, Judy?
I think a little bit is that you could experience a bit of a windfall getting the cash back. And do you have any responsibility at that point in time? Like, what if I want to spend it on something that isn't a 529 cost?
Well, Susan, I'll just caution for someone who's in that scenario and they've received a refund back from the school, if they don't recontribute it back into their 529 plan, then that money that they've received, yes, it's a windfall, and all of a sudden it's also a non-qualified withdrawal. It was used to pay for rent or room and board with the school. Now that's the school's given it back to you. It was not used for that expense. You've got the cash in hand. And as I mentioned earlier, the earnings on that could be taxed at the state and federal level if they're not redeposited back into that child's 529 plan or used towards another qualified expense with that institution, before the school year's out.
Okay.
Before the calendar year's
Before
out.
the calendar, yeah.
Okay, so this, in fact, is one of my family's story. My son goes to Ohio State, and the sophomores were told that they should try to live off campus. So we know that some of that money can be used for housing. Are there any parameters to that? Does it have to, is there a reasonable factor? What if he lives in a very fancy high rise? Can we still pay for all of that out of the 529?
Again, it's what Ohio State, in your case, would charge for room and board. You can take up to that amount. If you do go uptown, so to speak, and you exceed that amount, then you have to justify that you took more, for room and board than what the school would have charged.
Okay, so I think we answered this one. This one was, if we're hurting financially, can we withdraw the money from our 529? And I think, Ben, you addressed that earlier, right?
If you absolutely have to, absolutely. You, as Tim said earlier, you control the account. You make the decisions on how long the money's in there and when you get it out, even in the worst case scenario.
Okay, so economic impact. We're looking at this instability right now, and should people be making changes to their investments in their 529 plan or sitting tight? What's the recommendation?
We cannot give financial advice. That's by law. We'll facilitate information. But I will tell you a story. Things were bad at the beginning in March, and about when the COVID pandemic hit in force in this country. And the market took a hit, and people got anxious, and not only just with 529s, but investing in general, were compelled to withdraw and cut their losses, so to speak, in the market. April came around, and all those losses were made up. There were among the 5 top performing days in the market history in April. And so people did that. They missed on that mini recovery, so to speak, for lack of a better term. So what we would advocate is stay the course. We develop our portfolios, and in concert with our partners, that's Wilshire is our advisors, Vanguard in our direct plan, DFA in the direct plan, Fifth Third Bank on the advisor side with BlackRock, these portfolios are developed to be all weather, so to speak. And so the I guess counsel, even though we're not supposed to give counsel or advice, is to stay the course, because the market history proves it's going to be okay in the long run.
Yeah, as Tim has said, we are not advisors, but I know, people who have called the office, people who we've seen when we're out, who have questions in regards to what they should do. I think the simple answer that we all say is just stay the course. We've all been there, and you look at it, and the numbers might not be where you want them to be right then and there, what's happening, but it will rebound and it will go back.
Okay, so you might have to answer this the same way with some kind of scenario, since you can't give advice on this. But so there's some worry that kids who are applying to college right now, that the colleges are going to be giving less financial aid. And so is it a good idea to divert funds from retirement into a 529?
Is the question diverting money that would have instead gone into a retirement plan?
Yeah.
Instead of saving for retirement.
Yeah.
Well, the maxim within financial services as a whole is, we don't like to see this, but worst case, you can always borrow for college. You can't borrow for your retirement. Now, conversely, age 18 is kind of a set date. Some type of education after high school, that's relatively set. Unfortunately, when you retire, that's flexible. So, as far as whether one would want to do that or not, that's a personal decision. If you have dollars available for that expense that's coming relatively soon, that's up to you, and it's based on your income, based on your preferences, and what you feel most comfortable with.
And I think that's an excellent point, because that's come up not even in COVID times, but in general, that okay, we didn't use 529, or we didn't save for those after high school education expenses, and we'll go into our retirement account. And Ben makes an excellent point. That's pretty risky, and nobody likes to go the loan route. And student loan debt, as you know, in this country is $1.5 trillion. That's staggering. But just our whole point of our conversation here this evening is there is a better way, and saving and investing in a 529 account is what we would submit is the better way.
And Susan, something else that occurs to me on this topic, especially depending on the age of the child, you might be better served to look for other ways to reduce college costs before your child gets to college age. If they live here in Ohio, pursue college credit plus options, where you can actually attain college credit while your child's in high school, in some cases even junior high, I think, by starting to take college courses now while they're a high school student. The good news is that's paid for you, so you don't have to worry about paying for it, or seeking AP credit, taking advantage of AP courses while your child's in high school and following up with an AP test. I know there are a few schools around the state districts that offer the International Baccalaureate program, which also allows for attainment of college credit. Look for resources like that. And if you're worried about the institutional aid drying up, start your scholarship searches now. Go to Sallie Mae and some of the other sources that are out there to start looking. Do the deep digging now, while your child's in junior high or early on in college, not waiting till senior year to look for available aid that might be there independent of the institution. Look for other ways to help make it affordable before you raid your own savings or have to accumulate too much debt.
So that's great advice. And Ben, I think that you guys have a partnership with Sallie Mae, and maybe you could put in the comments a link for going there and looking for scholarship information.
Absolutely.
It is, and I'd like to add to that, because if you go visit that site, and there are others besides Sallie Mae, good grief, there's an interest out there. We kind of trying to inject a little bit of humor that if you're a left-handed cello player, you could probably find a scholarship out there. There is just an incredible amount of aid, and these may only be $400 or $500, but that's what we're getting at here, because maybe the 529 plan isn't the end-all catch-all for all this, but you have your 529. You take college credit plus, you get some assistance and these types of scholarships that we're talking about, and maybe loans are just an inevitable of that, and but the thing is that you're minimizing it. You're not borrowing, like for an in-state school here in Ohio. You borrowed for a 4-year degree, assuming that it took 4 years to complete the degree, tuition, fees, room, board. You're talking $80,000 plus to do that. But if you can piece that up, and maybe you only have to borrow a quarter of that, then that's better than having to take it all out for a loan.
Okay, so I'm going to ask anyone who has one last question to put it in the comments, and we'll get to that. And in the meantime, we're going to start wrapping this up. So Judy, if you have any parting words for us.
I guess I just would just say, if you have a young child, if you can, just save something, that's the best way to handle it. 529 is the best way to do it. We are a little biased, of course, but we feel like that is the best way. And the flexibility, you can't beat it. It works with you, not against you, and it works for you. And so I encourage families to start a College Advantage account and save.
Okay, Ben?
Hey, so first of all, I will say I am a newbie to this platform. I have dropped a few links in the private chat. I'm not sure if
Put it in the comments.
I'll
copy it while you give us your words.
Hey, so we've talked. I would be remiss in my job as director of marketing if I didn't tell you how we can help you. Probably the easiest thing to do. Hey, you're already on Facebook. Visit our Facebook page for College Advantage, or come to our website at collegeadvantage.com. Visit our blog. I can share with you 3 different ways that you may be eligible to win $10,000 with us. I apologize in advance for the Browns fans who are in the chat tonight, especially. We are doing a $10,000 sweepstakes with the Cincinnati Bengals. That's live on our Facebook page today. We're also doing a $10,000 sweepstakes with the Cincinnati Reds, also on Facebook. But to show that we're not partial to Cincinnati, we're also doing a $10,000 sweepstakes with the Cleveland Indians. And you can actually go to collegeadvantage.com/Indians or collegeadvantage.com/Reds20, Reds 2020, to enter either one of those sweepstakes and get more information.
Right. That is good news. Good luck to somebody here for getting it. We'll be excited. And Tim, parting words.
For 30 years, that's how long the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority has been in business. We were established in 1989 by the Ohio legislature. It started with a guaranteed plan, which is our legacy plan. That was closed to new contributions and new accounts in 2003. But in the mid-90s, when 529 plans became available at the federal level, Ohio began offering that as a savings and investment option for Ohioans, but for people across the country. And we have the direct plan, as I mentioned, and the advisor plan. So we've been doing this for a while and helping families and, importantly, students, beneficiaries realize those higher education goals. Also, it's a family thing. We encourage grandparents to get involved in it. We hear so often from parents and grandparents alike that kids have enough stuff. This is a living legacy. Maybe for that birthday and for Christmas or whatever the occasion may be, the gift is a contribution to the beneficiaries, the child's 529 plan. And although they may not elicit the excitement, the joy, the glee that the latest widget or gadget or toy may get, in the long run, that will pay off. And just visit us on our webpage. We have a ton of information that's available there. It's easy to get started. For as little as $25, you can get started. Very modest, but again, as I said earlier, that creates that momentum. And you can reach out. There's a way to contact us if you want to talk to one of our customer service representatives. We have videos. We have blogs. We're told that our webpage is not jargony, if that's a word. That it's very accessible and easy to use. So, thanks for listening to us this evening. Obviously, we're very passionate about that, and we invite you to save and invest in our plan.
Okay, I dumped myself out of this call. Sorry, everyone. So much for my skill set. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here, and a special thank to Ben Gibbons, Judy Cunningham, Tim Gurrell from the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority. Thanks so much. This was so informative. And Ben, Jennifer Pro wants to say ouch to you.
I noticed, yeah. Hey, we are partners with both the Bengals and the Browns. We're also nonpartisan when it comes to Ohio football teams. We got to sweepstakes with them first.
All right. Well, this was really informative. Thanks so much. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Susan.
You have a good night
everybody.
also.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.